Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at tweepy in Python, and generally Twitter is a huge site that you can use to send tweets, which are short messages, and Twitter has an API that you can use in Python. It's not incredibly simple to use, but then again it's not incredibly complex either. However, there is a library called tweepy, which is a Python library for using this API, which means you can automate sending messages, adding users, and all the things you do on Twitter slightly more easily. So the first thing is I've got this credentials.json file here, which I'm not going to open because it has all my access keys in, but you'll need to create one of these using the Twitter API and set up a developer account so that you can use it. And this just stops anyone from using Twitter, and also it limits the number of requests they can make. So we'll say from tweepy import client, because that's the thing we're going to be using. Also, it can import random and JSON. And so first I want to load my credentials file, and I'll just say that my credentials are json.load that file. So next we're going to create a client, and this is just a client, and I'm going to set my credentials equal to credentials and the return type equal to dict. And so you can see here there are a whole bunch of options. So bearer token, which is in my credentials file, consumer key, consumer secret, these are all in my credentials file. And then return type is response, which means that instead of returning a tweepy.response, it's going to return a dictionary. And then wait on rate limit basically means wait if you exceed your rate limit until you can send the next message. But we're not going to be exceeding that limit, so it doesn't matter that much. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tweet, and the text is going to be hello world. Because this is Twitter, I might put a hashtag that says hello world. So then I'll pip install tweepy, which I probably should have done at the start, but you can see it's already there, and then python main.py, and we didn't get to see the response, but we'll have a look at it later. So I'll do it again. However, you can see we get an error saying you're not allowed to create a tweet with duplicate content. So that's where we've imported random. What we'll do is we'll then put a random.random, so a random number, and I'll put it to 5 figures. So it's going to be a random number, which I'll put in brackets afterwards to make sure that that's a unique tweet, and then put a hashtag success. And I'm not going to put a seed because that would defeat the whole point of creating the randomness. So then I'll print the response, and we can see it says yes, we have this data, has an ID of this number, has text, and it was a success. And if we do it again, you can see the ID increases slightly. And I'm not sure whether they're all unique, but that would be a lot of tweets having been created in the last second if they were. I'm also going to make this printing a bit nicer, so I'm going to find a pre-print function. And there are functions like this that already exist, but I want to set this one up so that it prints JSON dumps the response, and I want to set the indent equal to 4 so it looks nice. And rather than printing the response, we'll just pre-print it, and that looks a bit nicer, a bit clearer to read. So the next thing we can do is we can get the client to search tweets. And searching all tweets you need special access for, but you might want to search recent tweets. Maybe you're creating something that continually looks for tweets, and you want to see when someone creates a tweet with a certain word in or a certain hashtag. And so the one we're going to be looking for is success. And the queries can have a whole bunch of forms, but if you want to look for a hashtag, you just put hashtag and then the hashtag. And I want the expansion to be the place ID, and we want the max results equal to 10. And this could be any number between 10 and 100, and the default is 10. I've just set it so you can see that it works, and then we'll print our response. So if I scroll up, we can see that we have created the tweet again with a new random seed, and then it turns out there are other tweets. So there's one here that this person has put, which has come up under hashtag success, even though it doesn't look like the hashtag is there. Then these random ones are created, and then we go further back, and we see, for example, this one's got hashtag success, and all the way. And surprisingly, it has ignored the expansion. So I'm going to change the expansion to author ID. And see now it's got a list of names and usernames for each author based on, so here it's got the ID, and then here it's got the ID, and that leads to a certain name. But from now on, we're not going to need these, so I'm going to comment them out. And we're going to instead look for a user. And it would make sense for the user we get to have the username G Van Rossum. And maybe you'll remember who that is. And we also want to set the user fields equal to verified and name. So what we'll do is we'll search up this person, and of course this is Guido Van Rossum, the creator of Python. You can see that he has been verified, and it tells us here that his username is G Van Rossum. So that's nice to know it has worked. However, we're also going to save the ID. The ID is the response data, which you'll notice this is data, and then ID. Because then you can look up his user following, and we can set the ID equal to the ID, the user fields equal to username and description, so we can get the username and description of the person. And we'll just set the macro results equal to 1. So we're not going to look up all his followers, just the top one. And then we can print the response. And we get this person who is called Camila Gutierrez. Although it's hard to see the details, so what we can then do is we can say that the user is the response data 0, because you can see this data is a list, it just has 1 in because we specified max result of 1. And we can print the user's name and description. And this means that all these ASCII characters, these Unicode characters, come out, especially if I spell them correctly. And so we have Camila Gutierrez, who does memes for Chiangolo. And we can see that she has put all these things in her Python, in her Twitter description. And we also know that one of her followers is Guido Van Rossum. So you can see the Twitter API has lots of commands, and the reality is anything you can do on Twitter, you can do with the API. One thing to be aware of is that there are these tokens, and you can then use the tokens to put in a token when you're searching, and that allows you to loop through it in kind of pages. And that means if you want more than 100 results, for example, you can continually loop through. So hopefully you've learned how to use tweepy, at least in a basic sense. You'll be able to create your own tweets or look through Twitter and find tweets with certain things in. And if you're interested, you can look at all the documentation and do loads and loads of other stuff. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again, same time next week. Till then.